to our Women in Sports series. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Miriam Glaze. I am the founder of Athlete Soul. And we are joined today with 4 incredible ladies who we are going to talk to about leadership and finding your unique voice. So ladies, thank you for joining us. We'll have you introduce yourself in a minute. We're going to be also spending the second part of this call in the small breakout room so that you get to connect further with our panelists and participant to participant. And then LJ, who is here, will be moderating our panel discussion. But before that, I wanted to give you a quick background onto our Women in Sport initiative. So you may know that Athlete Soul is a nonprofit organization which support athletes as they transition away from sport. And we are also an organization that was founded by female athletes. So we want to make sure that we support female athletes' specific needs. And so last year we conducted many discussions with former female athletes to identify what challenges these ladies have faced when pursuing a career, a professional career in the sport industry, and how can we solve or help mitigate those challenges. And so 4 of the challenges that we identify related to 4 specific areas: work-life balance, gender inequality, emotional challenges, and gender norms and expectations. So this Women in Sports series discussion, this one today and some others that we have for the rest of the year, is really our solution to educate, mentor, and connect female athletes with other female athletes or former female athletes. So this is where this is coming from. And we hope that this first one on leadership is really going to get us started on that path. So LJ, I'm going to pass it on to you for the introduction of our panelists.
Thank you, Miriam. My name is LJ Holmgren, and I am the Deputy Academic Director at Columbia University's Master of Science Sports Management program, where I currently teach a course called Olympians as Brands. I am also a volunteer for Athlete Soul, so I've been working with Miriam on these series to help support any way that I can this organization as she and the organization supports athletes transitioning in their career. So we are very excited to host this panel tonight and to share a little bit more background on the panel. It's a 2-part discussion. The next one will be in October, and it features women at the top of their game. And we're going to ask them to share their pivotal leadership moments that define who they are. As many of you here are transitioning athletes from maybe athletes to career or thinking about that, we know that you're ascending or have ascended to the top of your game and exhibited unique leadership traits along the way. So we're trying to help you shape some of these current experience and past experience as you start to think about your next chapter. This session will be interactive, so of course, introducing yourself in the chat. And as Miriam mentioned, we'll be in breakout rooms later. So we really want to make sure the goal is for athletes to begin to transition away from competition to your next chapter. And we have 2 objectives for tonight. The first is to determine what leadership looks like to you. And the second is to articulate your unique leadership traits. We'll work on both in the breakout sessions themselves. And what I'd like to do next is move into the panel session so that you can really hear from these incredible women on your screen and really think about how it relates to you as a leader. I had this whole introduction written on them, but in the pre-call that we had for this, they were so impressive with the background and the details that they shared. So I want to make sure I give them as much time as possible in the spotlight. So I'll introduce our 4 panelists for this evening, but then I'll ask them to introduce themselves and share a brief background before we dive into questions. Tonight, we're featuring on our panel Tianna Bartoletta, Monica Lebron, Chelle Thompson, and Joanne Pasternack. We'll start with introductions from Tianna, if you wouldn't mind going first.
So yes, my name is Tianna. I am a professional track and field athlete. Started this journey in Ohio, where I was born and raised. Got a full academic and athletic scholarship to UT. Go Vols, Monica. While at UT, I actually won the World Championships my sophomore year as a 19-year-old. And at that point went pro, was a sponsored Nike athlete for 14 of the 16 years that I was a professional athlete. In that span of time, so I don't know if you'll believe me, but I'm 36 now. So I went pro at 20. I've made 2 Olympic teams. I have 3 Olympic gold medals, a world record, 3 world championship titles, 3 world championship bronze medals, 9 global championship medals. And during that entire span of time, I really worked hard to be more than an athlete. So one of my other identities, as Mina can attest to, your intern, is that I write. So I write about everything that's important to us on and off the field of play. So whatever it is, because I don't believe that there's a separation between who maybe we compartmentalize when we're playing the game, when we're executing and focusing, but I bring all of that fury and passion from my real life onto the field. And I am looking forward to sharing with all of you how that can be, alchemy for leadership.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Monica, would you mind going next?
Hey everyone, again, my name is Monica Lebron and I serve as our Deputy Athletic Director here at the University of Tennessee, where I've been for the last 6 months. My entire career has been in college athletics. I grew up in San Jose, California, but was recruited to play softball and ended up playing at Yale University. And I was on financial aid at Yale. And when you're on financial aid, you have to work an on-campus job. And so my coach said, hey, do you want to work for the admin assistant of the AD? I said, sure, I don't know what an AD does, but sign me up. So first day freshman year, I show up in New Haven and I start working in the athletic department, doing odd jobs, about 10 hours a week. And by semester's end, I sat our AD down and said, okay, how do I become you? And that was 24 years ago. I've been chasing that dream ever since. So I've worked at various institutions. Again, I worked all 4 years at a couple internships, went on to Ohio University for graduate school, got my MBA and a master's in sports administration. Worked at the NCAA for a year as an intern, and then ultimately started my full-time career at the University of Florida. Most of my career was in athletics development and fundraising. So I was at Florida, I was at Cal, I was at Ole Miss, I was at Georgia. And then prior to Tennessee, I was at Tulane University, where I served as the sole deputy there, overseeing football and a few other sports, and then overseeing all the day-to-day operations, but mainly anything that generated revenue. And so was there 4.5 years, and Tennessee came calling. And so I'm one of our number 2s here, and hopefully the next stop will be that AD chair. So thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Monica, I spent 8 years in college athletics, and you were one of my heroes in the space, watching your career grow over time. So I'm thrilled to hear your introduction and background today.
Thank you.
Up next, Chelle, would you mind introducing yourself next?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Chelle Thompson. It's actually Alicia Thompson, but I go by Chelle. I'm originally from a small town in Texas called Big Lake, Texas. I went to college as a basketball and track athlete, Texas Tech University, where I had an amazing career, was an All-American there, Big 12 Player of the Year there, just a lot of great memories and all of that. That got me awarded to be drafted into the WNBA in the second year of its existence, and I went to the New York Liberty. And then I played a few years in the league, 6 years total, played overseas 5 years. I won a WNBA championship with the Seattle Storm in 2004. And since retiring from basketball in 2007, I've been mentoring, coaching, public speaking, and really just trying to give back through opportunities that the sport of basketball and track provided for me. So super excited to share with you guys today.
Amazing. Joanne, would you mind sharing yours?
Sure, but first of all, I just want to hang out with all these ladies all the time. When we did our prep call, I just thought to myself, like, there is so much I can learn from each and every one of you. And I kind of wanted to like reach in and grab Monica and bring her out to San Jose State, because I live about 2 blocks from San Jose State. We just hired a new AD, and I was really optimistic that we were going to get a great candidate who showcased the power of women, the power of our knowledge, and they did not. But Monica, I think you'll be here in 2 years. That's my guess. All right, we're going to bring you in as the AD. So my name is Joanne. That was a really long soliloquy before my introduction, but I was a competitive figure skater growing up. I injured out of my sport at 16, and it devastated me. I didn't know who I was or what I should do without that in my life. In fact, I joke sometimes that my mom would introduce me as the figure skater, my sister was the musician, and my brother was the boy. And that was just how it was. If you were to ask my mom today, and I retired, well, 30 years ago, I guess, due to injury, if you were to ask what the most interesting thing is that I've ever done, she'd probably still bring up the fact that I skated at nationals in Dallas or something like that. Because this sports thing, it's part of our identity. I was able to take my sport and then actually earn a good amount of money from it. When I was in college, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. We had a full-size rink there. I became a certified coach, loved it, made 10 times what most of my friends are making washing dishes or taking notes for professors. Helped me avoid the freshman 15, which has, of course, become the COVID 30, but we're not going to talk about that today. But after that, I went to law school and I focused on public interest law because I saw throughout my career to come that it was about using your voice, was about amplifying your voice, telling your story and owning that story. So worked for Special Olympics at their global headquarters in Washington, D.C., spent some time in city government where I got to launch a police activities league to connect kids and cops together through shared interests in sport. And while I was there and had my daughter, I decided that I wanted to do that full time and was fortunate to find an opportunity with the San Francisco 49ers as a community relations director, which I had almost none of the qualifications for, but somehow believed enough in myself to put it out there and convince them to hire me. I spent 9 years there, built up and built out their community impact platforms and landed in the VP role by the time I left there to go to the Golden State Warriors, where I took on a VP and EVP role to run their foundation and their community affairs. And 2 years ago, launched my own agency to focus on amplifying voices around change and helping athletes with this transition. So, oh, and I had another kid somewhere around there too. So mom of two, and both my kids are super athletes and super into their athletics. And so now I'm reliving my mom's world, but through my own eyes. And that's me.
Wonderful. I appreciated learning more about each of you, as I'm sure the attendees did as well. So we're going to dive into some questions that we have, and I've broken them up for each of you. So the first one is really the purpose of the panel is finding the leader in you. So Chelle, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, what does leadership look like to you?
Leadership to me is influence. I feel like we're always influencing in one way or another, whether it's positive or negative. And for me, leadership is the capability or having the ability to positively impact and influence the people that are around you, whether it's your teammates, whether it's your family, whether it's friends or coworkers. Whatever that is, you're influencing them in a positive direction to achieve a common goal. And so I think what that looks like is just showing up as your unique and authentic self. And I'll probably get into that a little bit more with the questions, but in a nutshell, it's just being your authentic self and then positively influencing others.
Amazing. Joanne, I'm going to ask you to answer the same question. So what does leadership mean to you? So we can hear two different perspectives as well.
I've had the great fortune of working for some of the best leaders, like hands down. I was raised by a great leader, my father, but then I had an opportunity to work for Eunice Kennedy Shriver when I was at Special Olympics. And she said something that I have it hanging on my wall because I need to remind myself of this. But I was like 25, had no business offering up insight into a program that they were looking to launch, but did anyway. And she looked at me across this entire room and said, let's see if we can't find a way to make that happen. And I love that statement because she was empowering me, but she wasn't promising me. It was clear that I needed to put the work in to get it done, but that I was empowered to do that. And so that combination was really exciting for me at the time when, as a 25-year-old newly launched law school graduate, I wasn't as confident in my own voice as I should be. When I was at the Warriors, I worked for Coach Steve Kerr, and this was a man who quietly sits, listens, takes it all in, and then brings it back in a way that makes it really understandable. But both of them, what they had in common was they were collaborative leaders and they were great listeners. And I mean, I sure can talk, but I try to listen when I can. And I do think that that's an important characteristic. Those of us who are retired athletes, we've been coached our whole lives. So we know how to be coached, but we've had good coaches and bad coaches. And the ones that actually take the time to figure out what motivates us are the ones that make us the most successful versions of ourselves. So I think the same applies to leadership.
Thank you. Both excellent answers and a slightly different perspective on each. So the next one is a slight variation, and I'd like to start with you, Monica. What is your leadership style and how has it evolved from your competitive days to the corporate world?
I would say my leadership style is just being inclusive. I want to invite people to have a seat at the table. I want people around me to feel that they have a voice. At the end of the day, if you're the leader, if you're the person in charge, you ultimately have to make a decision. But I've just based on my experience, when people feel like they're a part of the decision and they do have a voice and they are being heard, they're more likely to buy in. So that's how I've led in everything I've done. And really, it wasn't much different from my playing days. So as an athlete, I'll focus even just, I played all sports growing up, but softball, that team sport, each player wants to feel loved and nurtured and supported. And so I always tried to be, and it wasn't even something that I thought of consciously. It's just something that's inside of me, that I'm that coach on the field for them, lifting them up. I'm trying to watch people's emotions, highs and lows. I'm trying to support them in every possible way so that they do feel empowered. So my leadership as an athlete, as a student athlete, really has helped me become the leader I am today. But ultimately, it's let's try and include as many people as possible, because together we will be stronger.
Amazing, building that community and support for that community overall. Tianna, we're going to ask you, what was your leadership style, but what are still relevant today from when you were an athlete? Like what still transcends Tianna back in the day till now?
Yeah, so I'm not a team player. I just track and field is an individual sport, and it's really cool because my performance as an individual does contribute to the larger team, which is very much what it's like in corporate. Everybody has their own expectations and roles. I would say that I have always been a problem solver, largely because I actually wasn't the most gifted athlete, but I had to figure out how to get there. Like I had to, my father and I had to ask the right questions, seek out the right resources, and work our way, earn this scholarship through blood, sweat, and tears. There was no, oh, look at Tianna at 3 going over these sticks. She's going to be in the next great hurdler. No, that's not what happened. And so as I got older and have been in professional spaces and running my own business, my leadership style is very much empathy mixed with problem solving. So where empathy comes in is I can listen to anybody around me and really put myself in their shoes in order to find the solution to the problem. Because one of my, I think, just gifts I was born with is this radical belief that every problem has a solution. I just need to be willing to dig it out, to find it, do the work. And so as a leader, how that shows up, even, with Team USA, it's 4x1s at the Olympic Games and all the stuff that goes into that. It's like, I'm listening to you talk to me about what your concern is. Let's find the solution. Similar to what Joanne said, Shriver said, like, let's figure out how to make this happen. That's where I go after I've listened and fully understood a person's situation.
So let's stay with you, Tianna, and let's talk about leaving a little of Tianna wherever you go. So can you share with me some of your leadership traits and maybe your leadership philosophy that we were talking about in our prep call?
Like Chelle was saying at the beginning, how leadership is influence. I tend to be really uncomfortable because I'm an introvert. So I'm not always like trying to make people do certain things. And a lot of that is my own inner mind trash, let's call it, like not believing that that's something I have to offer. But I do believe leadership for me is role modeling. And so I try to live in a way that's authentic, like just live the life. And that way, the people around me can see it for themselves. It's not me just telling them, because we live in a world where there's a lot of lip service, right? Like people will say just about anything to try to get you to do anything. I mean, everybody's Instagram account is a home shopping network, you know, like we never know like who really enjoys this thing or who is living the life. And so that's kind of where I sit. And so I became a storyteller, a great listener, and I really try to just embody the things that I want to see. And as you do that, you'll find that you attract those things to yourself as well. So it's not just that you become a leader of followers, you might just become a leader in a room full of other leaders. Like this call feels like a mastermind group to me. Like this doesn't feel like a webinar or panel. This feels like we gather monthly to figure out how to take over the world. That's what this feels like. And on all of that is because each and every one of us is living a life of service and really role modeling what leadership means to us. And that's kind of how I sprinkle Tianna in all of the spaces that I occupy.
Leaving gifts with people, right? Well, that's what Miriam does. I don't know if maybe you missed that email where she said this was the assembly of superheroes trying to solve how to find the leader in you for each person that is attending today's call. So I'm glad you got the message anyway. So my next question is for Joanne, and this is something that many of us deal with. There's imposter syndrome out there. There's the time where you need to be the chameleon and blend into the situation, and there's a time where you need to step up and stand out. So my question for you is, how do you balance the challenge to conform what others are wanting or expecting from you versus standing out?
Well, so I was born with red curly hair, which means that I didn't get a chance to really blend ever. But no, I mean, seriously, it's changed so many times. Like I feel like in my 20s, I was trying to fake it till people believed that I actually knew what I was talking about. In my 30s, I knew that I knew a lot about what I was talking about, but I needed to read the room better, blend in, try to figure out how to navigate it so I could get to those executive level positions. And at some point during that time, somebody said to me, you need to get a seat at the table in order to be heard. That was my approach when I was in my 30s. But then I got to my 40s and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with that whole chameleon kind of role. But I didn't, if I look backwards, I couldn't have done it in my 20s or my 30s. Like I really needed to listen and learn and grow. And even though I thought that I sometimes might be the smartest person in the room or the most knowledgeable about something or whatever, like it turns out that having the academic or intellectual qualifications has nothing to do with the experience that I gained. So in my more recent years, I've worked on trying to be a voice for those who don't have the opportunity yet, and to open doors and walk people in. Some of my greatest advocates and mentors have been women in sports, but also some of my greatest adversaries have been women in sports. And that's something that I navigate really carefully. I mean, look, I feel like I'm in therapy now. I'm like, I have trust issues. I have, but I do, because when you're growing up in sports, and particularly if you're me and you grew up in a women's sport primarily, I mean, we had men, but it was definitely dominated by the women in the sport. And then I go into an individual sport. Now I'm in a team environment with all these men, and the men in the locker room were never the problem. It was the men in the front office who wanted to keep their hold on that table, that conference room table. And so it goes back to what I said about Mrs. Shriver too. It's the listening and then trying to react. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think we have different stages in our life when we can lean in more or less to what our true purpose or values are.
Thank you. A very thoughtful and deep response there. Chelle, I'll ask you the same question. WNBA, Nike, how do you balance the challenge to conform versus standing out?
I've never been too good at conforming. I've always been who I am. And in my opinion, leadership is more about transforming yourself and discovering yourself so that you can help others to discover and transform themselves into who they really are. Because we can sometimes identify with sports and the things that we think that we should be in life. But for me, it's I am who I am authentically. Everything else outside of that, sport, band, whatever else, is an experience. And so I think as we begin to grow and shape and discover ourselves and who we are and our purpose and what we want our legacy to be, then in that transformation alone, you'll see that you have more of an impact on people because they'll notice a change in you. Like, oh, you may be different to them, but if it's in a way, again, if you're positively influencing, they're like, wow, I like this about you. How can I discover this in myself so that I can be the same thing? And so I think it's less about conforming and more about transforming.
That ripple effect you're talking about, and I appreciate your remarks on transforming and discovering oneself to then give back and leave those gifts that Tianna was discussing earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think she said it perfectly too. It's being a model, because people, what I've discovered throughout my careers, people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be shown what to do. And so if you're bossing people, you're telling them what to do. If you're leading people, you're showing them. They love to be coached. They love to be inspired. And so that's why I've never been able to conform, because I always want to be leading the pack. I want to be out in front, showing people how it should be done, and I'm going to do it the right way.
Thank you, Chelle. Honestly, after every question, panelists, if you have other remarks to say, please feel free to jump in and add on. It is conversational in that way, so it doesn't just need to be this interview style either. Monica, what do you wish your younger self knew about being a leader?
You attract more bees with honey than vinegar. My mom tried to tell me, I wasn't listening. So if I could go back in time and maybe not pop off so aggressively, or not send off that scathing email, maybe walk down the hall and talk to people. I have learned that in my elder age that, just pick up the phone or go talk to someone in person. I mean, don't hide behind an email or, nowadays a text. But yeah, you just never know what's going on the other end, whether someone's having a bad day or something has gone wrong. Oftentimes talking to someone face to face or at the very least over the phone, you're probably going to get a different outcome. So yes, I've learned that, and hopefully I'm continuing to implement that every day.
Copying a few less bosses on that email too, probably.
Oh, I've done that too.
But now I'm sure you're copied on some emails that you'd rather turn the other way.
Right.
I have a question for everyone on the panel. So I know it's hard to come off mute, and maybe it'll be a little trying to not talk over each other, but how did you find the leader in you, or was there a specific time where a leadership trait or quality emerged in you that surprised you or interested you?
I think it's a little bit about trying it on. So I took a lot of leadership positions in college, law school, early in my career through volunteer work, where the risk was really, really low. So I could try out. I was part of a women's organization and I needed to develop a strategic plan. I'd never done that before, but because it was a volunteer role, a volunteer organization, something I was doing for fun to grow, I could try things out, make mistakes, learn from them. And that helped me to grow my confidence as a leader. But other than that, I mean, it's really, it's trial and error, and I've made errors and I've learned from them. And I've also learned that what you say, if you're a leader and you say something that's negative about somebody, or, you know, whatever, it's like the old middle school practice of talking behind somebody's back, it comes back to you. And so being a leader means that you are holding yourself accountable and taking responsibility for those who report up to you, and knowing that how they see things is partially based off of the leadership that you provide.
So far in my life, I'd say that I've had the role bestowed on me because of just the life that I was living, or like the work ethic. Even back at UT, it's like, go ask Tianna. She knows how to do it. Like, follow her in the warm up or do the drills like that. And so it was kind of put on me. And then as a professional, like being on Team USA, being the first leg to run the 4x1 is kind of a de facto role, because you're the first person that gets the relay started. And you know what I learned from that is that you don't actually need to be separate from everybody else because you're the leader, right? You can be in the trenches with everyone else, but still kind of, to use like some street slang, be about that life. And like everyone knows that you are the go-to person, but that you are also shoulder to shoulder with them. That's kind of how it happened for me, because I don't have the personality type that's like, I want to be a leader when I grow up. Like, I'd rather not. I don't need to be in, I don't want everybody coming to me. I don't want my phone to ring. I don't want to be fielding all the emails. But at the same time, it's easier and more organic if these people are coming to me because I'm already living that life, and they're just, like Chelle was saying, they want to be shown how to do it better for themselves. That's more organic. And so my path was more like, I was doing what I was doing, and other people wanted to know how I was doing it. And so now I'm sharing that with other people. And that's what my leadership style kind of looks like and how it happened.
I saw a few smiles when you were saying that you don't want everyone coming to you. You don't want that. And I think that's part of this, is those that related to Tianna's comments are just knowing that that's okay, and knowing who you are to embrace that. Not everyone wants to be the external public voice of a company or an organization. There are plenty of other ways to be a leader without having those roles as well. Would any other panelists like to share their thoughts?
Yeah, I'll add that I've always run to the front of the line. I've always run to the head of the class. I've always wanted to be in charge, and not for the title, but just because I believe in myself and my ideas. And I like, again, to wrap my arms around everyone and make sure everyone's included. But that doesn't mean that I don't carry fear. So I'll give you an example. I am deathly afraid of public speaking, and I am now 42 years old. I have been doing, like, I signed up for the talent show in 3rd grade. So it's not like I haven't performed or been on stage or been the president of my class and had to, but it's like that fear never goes away, no matter how much I practice, no matter how much I believe in myself. But I don't ever let that fear keep me from raising my hand. So if someone needs a keynote, I'll do it. And then I'll figure out how I'm going to do it later. So I never shy away from those leadership moments, especially when I do have this innate fear. But yes, I would encourage everyone to try and overcome some of those fears that exist in all of us. But yeah, they certainly exist in me, but I'm always going to be the first one to raise my hand. And then I think, okay, I'll figure it out later.
I would say for me, my kindergarten teacher was also a family friend, and I got to speak with her a couple of years ago. And I was just asking her, because I remember bits and pieces of me as a 5-year-old or whatever. And so I was asking her what I was like. And she's like, you were always a leader. She's like, when it came to us playtime, she was like, you wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to jump rope and everybody was sharing toys. And she was like, you were so fair, even as a kid. And so I think just growing up in a household where it was expected, you know, even as a kid, to kind of be independent and take the initiative and step out and speak up if there was something that needed to be said, kind of just went with me throughout my career. My leadership style has definitely changed. Because I'm also introvert and I have the shy qualities. And so I also step into leadership roles because it challenges me to do things that I am uncomfortable doing. And I think that part of being a leader is you have to stand out on your own sometimes, which takes a lot of courage. And so I'm really just pushing the boundaries of my own courage and learning a lot about myself through having to show others and to be that for others. Because I'm always evolving and growing and changing. And I think that when I'm able to influence others and get feedback on how I'm showing up, then it's telling me places where I need to grow as well as an individual.
Thank you. Amazing, all of you. I find myself multitasking all day, so just dedicating the time to listen to other stories has been incredibly impactful on my day, and hopefully our attendees as well. Before we go into our breakout rooms, we'll have a few minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, for you to think through what does it mean to be a leader and think about your unique leadership traits. But before we do that, I just want to give a chance to our attendees to ask a question for the panelists. You could raise your digital hand, you could come off mute, you could put it in the chat, however you prefer.
I have a question. I've noticed many of you, or a few of you, have said that you were always introverts or didn't really think of yourselves as that loud vocal leader. When you were younger, or before you really owned that you were a leader, did you think that you couldn't be because you were so introverted, or because you didn't have that presence of a stereotypical leader? Just a general question to those who said they were a little bit shyer growing up.
You want to go, Chelle?
Go for it. Go for it.
I'm gonna put it this way. My introvert looks like I can be loud, I can have my sign up, I can shout, but I also will need to recover for like 4 days after that, like after I've done it. But what it showed up as a kid is like this growing, you need to say something. And so I think for me, it was that battle between, should I say something? I know I need to say something, or should I just shrink? And like Chelle was saying, it's really, and Monica, it's about pushing through that initial fear of oh my gosh, as soon as I open my mouth, they're going to see me. Everybody's going to look at me. So my introversion shows up as apprehension to speak, but like Monica, I always speak. It just means I'm a little bit shaky in my boots when I'm on the stage. I'm a little bit sweaty palms. I might need to have some note cards, but I'm going to speak, and then maybe pass out when I'm backstage and maybe need to be revived somehow. But it's definitely just when you're ready to lean into that leadership role, it's not going to be comfortable. It's not a comfortable experience. I think that's the difference. It's there's a little more discomfort with an introvert leaning into those roles, and we just have to do a little bit more work pushing through. And then extroverts, there are going to be some complications for them on the leadership side. Maybe it'll be harder to step back when they need to step back and just listen. So no, it's not a barrier to being a leader. It's literally just knowing kind of what your quirks are, what you need to do to refill your cup so you can get back out there and use your voice again. But no, it's not a barrier at all in my experience.
Thank you. That really clarified a lot.
Chelle, your experience?
I think as you build relationships, you can be, because I too was always the person that led by example. I was less vocal. It was only when I got to college and then as a professional that I was told, we need to hear from you more. You need to speak to your teammates. But I think that when you have people that naturally follow you, sometimes you don't speak out because you're unable to see the superpowers that you have within yourself. But people are following you because they see that in you. And I think that speaks volumes And so as you have people that kind of gather around you because they believe in you, you start to believe in yourself, you start to have more confidence. And once you see that you're like, oh my gosh, all these people, you know, I'm doing something to get their eyes on me. I'm doing something that forces them, or not forces, that naturally they believe in me. And once you start to embrace that, you kind of just take off and unfold like a flower. Like you start blossoming in a very natural way.
You know what's interesting though is, like, I don't know if any of you have found this, but during COVID, when we were isolated so much, it's almost like all of us lost some of those skills. I went to my daughter's friend's bat mitzvah a couple weeks ago, and although it was outside and people were doing the right things by COVID protocols, I found myself feeling more introverted than I'd ever felt in my life. Like I just felt like I was out of practice. And so I started to think about it as, you know, like any muscles we work out, it's okay to feel rusty. I try to give myself the grace to be able to take my time. And so at that event, when I felt overwhelmed, I stepped away, took a deep breath, got some water, came up with an excuse to go to the bathroom, you know, whatever it is, and just kind of get myself back. And then I felt like I could go back and be myself again. So that was kind of surprising for me as somebody who would say I'm an extrovert.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is transition to those breakout rooms. If you had a question, it's not too late. When we come back into the main session, you'll be able to ask those of the panelists as well. I'm going to put some breakout prompts in the chat, and you'll be broken down with a panelist from today's call and someone from Athletes Soul as well to talk through it. So the breakout prompts are in front of you, and Miriam, I'll turn it over to you to put us into the room. She'll bring us back in about 5 or 6 minutes for a wrap up and reflection.
Perfect. Thank you, LJ. I redid the room a little bit because there's a few people here. You can see already some of the breakout prompts. Obviously, you can also go through an organic conversation. I'm sending you in right now, and it should be about 5 or 7 minutes. Okay. And then
I'll be back here in a few.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. So we have just a few more minutes with our panelists here. So if you have any questions, I welcome you to come off mic and ask them. And then if not, I'll give it a few seconds. We will then start to wrap up today.
I had a question for Joanne, and I didn't really get to hear it complete. And I also want to pose it to the rest of the speakers too. And so I was going to ask this before the breakout rooms, but I was a little late. So my question is, how do you advocate for yourself? I'm asking that as a student athlete, as a female in a system, trying to grow. So that's kind of my question. Joanne was on a great roll and then we got cut off. So if you want to start all over, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll very quickly summarize it. What I said was that as an athlete growing up as a figure skater, I was taught to just acquiesce to the coaches. I mean, Katie was in our room as well, former gymnast. And I didn't get to pick my music. I didn't get to pick my choreography, my costumes, anything. And so I grew up in this environment where I believed that what the person in authority was saying was what I needed to do. And so when I came into the workplace and people kept saying, you know, you have to say what you want. I mean, relationships too. It's almost like I overcompensated. So then I started to overshare and over push back and like do that thing. And it's been a really interesting exercise. And then I guess it goes back to the same thing I've said all along, which is reading the room and listening. I've worked for people who absolutely want to hear my opinion and mean it. And I've worked for some who really don't care. They're just saying it because they think they're supposed to. And I don't even waste my breath anymore. I just try to move through it. And I also have a strong philosophy around just, you know, you get GSD, get stuff done. I'm going to figure out a way. And sometimes I have to be my own leader and just do it. And I've had situations where I get reprimanded in reverse, you know, hey, you did that thing. And I'm like, well, it was successful, right? Yeah, but you didn't do it the way, you know, we should have, you know, we would have done it. Okay, great, whatever. You know, that's how we move forward.
Thank you. So it's kind of following that intuition and that gut feeling. Easy.
I was gonna say I honestly wasn't able to start advocating for myself until I knew exactly what I was working towards and like what my values were. And then that became like my North Star. So I also at that time at UT, it was like we were in boot camp. There's like you don't question anything, you do what you're told, like this is what's happening. But then I went pro, right? And I was now writing the checks for the coaches. And like Joanne said, I definitely overcorrected. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm paying you kind of thing. I went way, way, way left as a young pro. But then as I started to do like the inner work, and Mina, you and I have talked about this all often, like just the meditation, the understanding what your personal values are, like really being on purpose. As soon as you are with a colleague, a teammate, or a coach that says something that's like not, I don't know if that's in alignment, then you speak up. And then there's, there are proper channels to speak up. Like, do you speak up in a room full of people? Not necessarily. Maybe you call a meeting and do it that way because there's egos involved. But when you need to advocate based on where it falls on your path between point A and point B and how it lines up with your values, your personal mission and goals.
I think that is so well said and right on cue with what I was going to say too, is nobody knows you like you know yourself. No one knows what you're capable of like you know what you're capable of. And as you begin to know and uncover more of yourself, when someone tries to take you in a direction that you, like Tianna says, that isn't right and it doesn't align with your purpose, with your legacy, with your values, then it'll be easy to say, no, that's not what I'm here for. That's not the path that I'm going in. And it's just being brave and having those conversations with people. And it's especially hard with women, and advocating for jobs and positions and being the only person or the only female in the room sometimes. But if you know that you are, I don't know, doing everything in the highest light and of the greatest intention, then you're on the right path.
Any last questions from our attendees? No? So our goal was to help you define what leadership looks like to you and to articulate your unique leadership traits. I saw a few head nods today, or maybe a point from a panelist really resonated with you. So before I let you go, I would like to, thank our panelists for their comments and time this evening, and thank Mina and Miriam for all that went into building out this panel. But I'd like for the panelists, if we could start with Chelle, and then we'll move through the rest, to share one piece of advice that you'd like to leave the attendees with, which we kind of started to do.
Yeah, I would just like to say that the journey is never ending. We're growing and changing every day. Nothing ever stays the same. And the more pliable you are in that, don't be resistant, the easier and the more you'll grow throughout your journey. Build connections, get to know the people that you are influencing and you're leading, connect with them, because as I was telling Gabriella in the group, people will naturally flock to you if you're doing the right things. But you have to build those connections, because when people know that you care and you show them that you care, then they're on board with you. But more than anything, I always say lead with love. If you know that your heart is in the right place, you're being fair, you're being kind, you are a servant, you're going to influence people in a major, major way. Be easy on yourself, be resilient, know that sometimes you will have to stand alone. It takes a lot of courage to do that, but you can do it. And just continue to speak with young women. I think a lot of leadership for us goes with giving back those that are coming behind us and kind of blazing the path for them. So I just wish you all the best of luck, and leave you with my favorite quote: no one in the world is you, and that is your superpower. You're all unique in your own ways, and that's what makes us superheroes in our own way. No, because nobody is like us. So find the things that you do well and continue to build upon those things, and the things that you need improvement on, look at those things too. Get constant feedback. You know, sometimes it hurts our feelings when someone tells us that we're not doing a good job at something. Don't take it personal. Just say, you know what, that is an area, you're right. I'm being an asshole here when I'm not supposed to be. Thank you for calling that out for me, and I will do better.
Chelle, sounds like you've been leading with love since kindergarten and beyond.
Thank you guys. This is awesome.
Monica, could you share your piece of advice?
Surround yourself with people who believe in you. And it really doesn't matter who it is. It could be your mom, your dad, your siblings, your significant other, a coach. It does not matter. But there's going to be times throughout your journey that maybe even the person you directly report to doesn't believe in you or is knocking you off the pedestal. Make sure you have that lifeline. I don't know how many times I've called my mom and I'm just like, I need to pick me up, you know, because I try to carry everything most of the time. And I'm most of the time going to be smiling, and most of the time I'm going to be full of a lot of energy and passion for what I do. But there's those moments where I have to come in this office, close the door and cry. And I need to know who I'm going to call, because they're going to pick me right back up. And I'm going to have that energy and that strength to keep going. And so make sure you have those people, because I would love it if life is 100% perfect for the rest of your life. But in the event that you run into those obstacles, you'll have that lifeline, that person, those people that'll lift you up and remind you you belong here. You have everything it takes to be great. You have everything it takes to be a leader. And you just needed to be reminded of it in that one critical moment. So make sure you find those people and surround yourself with them.
Joanne?
I'm going to build off of what Monica said. A dear friend of mine shared this advice with me a number of years ago, and I really took it to heart. But she said, you need to find your personal board of directors. So if you think about a nonprofit board or corporate board or your sorority board or whatever, you know that you want certain people for certain roles. So you're not going to put somebody in the CFO position or the finance manager position if they hate numbers and have never balanced a checkbook themselves. So same thing when you're reaching out to somebody for support, to think through, is my mother the right person to call here? Is my coach the right person to call here? Or is there somebody else completely? And it really helps to have a diversified board of directors so that you're getting the right opinions and the different opinions and really hearing from a lot of different positions. But also don't pull your entire board of directors every time you're trying to make a decision. And when I was growing up, my dad was a consultant and he taught us how to do weighted pro-con lists, because what he said was you might have 10 things on the pro list, but the one thing on the con list might negate everything on the pro list. So as you're thinking things through and you're polling your board of directors, make sure that you aren't over prioritizing or underestimating the impact something might have as you're making that decision. And so if you are the type of person where in my case, it was my dad, if I called my dad and he gave me advice, I felt like that he had so much power within his decision-making and I trusted him so much that it would sway me towards that. And so I really wanted to take the time to sit back and think about what I wanted and then bounce it off of people before going straight to somebody else for advice or direction.
Thank you, Joanne. Tianna, let's end on a high note with you tonight, with your advice.
No pressure. I was going to say this. There's no final destination on a leadership journey. It's a lifestyle. And so please, I hope you hear that and remove any pressure you were putting on yourself for getting to a certain point in a specific period of time. Like, that's completely unnecessary. But also on the flip side of that, self-care is a foundation of resilience. And the only way you can keep showing up and keep coming back and being your best authentic self over and over for this lifestyle that you are living as a leader is to make sure you take care of yourself. And this isn't like spa days on Thursdays. That's not exactly what, if that's what's going to refill your cup, by all means go to the spa. But I mean, really be deliberate about restoring your soul so that you can continue to show up for yourself and show up for others. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And this is not a short journey. This is a long road. You've heard Joanne, Chelle, and Monica talk about all the years that they've been doing this. And that is not possible if they are not 100% taking care of themselves first. People drawn to the leadership role tend to be like me, heart of service, gonna just give and give and give. And then one day it's like, I have nothing for me, right? And so that's what I want to leave you with. It's like you were doing essentially the Lord's work here, being a leader. Please take care of yourself. Please lean on your team or your personal board of directors. But absolutely, resilience is a skill that needs to be repeated over time, and you get better at it as you go. And the only way you can keep coming back is to take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's panel. Miriam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, ladies, for such great insight. It was really excellent. And I hope that everybody really understand the value of what you're getting here today, being able to access these incredible 4 ladies on such an intimate format. And I love, Joanne, I think it's you that mentioned the mastermind group, or maybe Tianna, because this is definitely how it felt. So thank you to all of you. LJ, thank you for moderating the panel. We do have a second session planned in October as a follow-up, where we're gonna dive into leadership a little bit more and kind of talk about some example as well of your own experiences. So, stay tuned for that. If you haven't registered for that session, I encourage you to do that. And of course, you feel free to share that with other athletes or teammate or student athlete in your school as well. I see a lot of the panelists have shared their email addresses. So if everybody is okay with that, I would love to put you all in contact with each other. And if for some reason you didn't want to, please email me and I will make sure that I don't share your personal email. But yeah, thank you everybody for this great, inspiring hour. And yeah, I'll see you back in a month, I think it is. Mina, can you share the link, please?
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. And of course, thank you, Mina, for your help with everything too. It's been great.
And thank you to I really felt like we sat with superheroes here, but then we got the Kent side of you guys, of Superman. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks,
you so
LJ,
much.
Miriam. Thanks, Mina.
Have a great week.
Tianna,
Thank you so
Monica.
I Wonder Women.
Joanne.
Go Balls!
Go
Balls!
Bye.
Bye.
Hard to leave, right?
Hi, thank you.
Bye.